The
There it is.
criteria we're going to go over. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with a topic that'll really make you mess your pants. No, probably not, but it's very important. What exactly is truth? A lot of people go around and like, well, I only believe in things that are true. Oh yeah, what's true? Whatever my mom told me. You know. So today we're going to go through the academics on this. And I'm going to be doing like a bunch of annoying things, like forcing everyone in a direction to where they should go to study things like truth and criteria of truth and epistemology and such. Go through the but first I must do my shares. I must share so people know we're live. I'm going to blast the Discord at everyone. We are live. What the hell is truth? Boom. I say it a boom, chicka boom. I didn't feel like getting triggered tonight, so I decided not to do like an episode fighting against the anti-AI religion.
Oh no!
I felt like I really felt like I wanted to, but I just felt like I didn't have the energy today.
I'm with you.
I feel like I might lash out irrationally.
That's all right. We're human.
Let's go with join the live discussion here. I don't think this is going to be a very popular stream because, funnily enough, people give way more of a shit about like how many shits Donald Trump took today as opposed to learning about truth and criteria of truth. And that goes for like most high resolution academic topics. Like if we started doing like really important educational topics here, there would just be like 2 people in the room probably the whole time.
Why is that? Is there such thing as a Trump inversion syndrome or?
Oh, Nick.
Oh my God! You latched onto the very wrong thing.
I do not want to crack open that egg, but it's funny that you just said that because out of everything I just said, that was the thing you jumped on, right? You're like, what do you think that? And I understand. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm interested in politics too, but there was a time to study academic things. And unfortunately, even when people have a real lack of foundation in things like trying to understand truth in an academic sense, they don't spend the time. They'll just go back to what's comfortable, watching their news streams.
I never mentioned Trump. I don't think I ever did.
You just mentioned Donald Trump. Do you need to
rewind?
I don't. You said, what is that about Trump derangement syndrome? That's exactly.
No, I'm saying like over time in general. I don't.
Okay.
It can go both ways. The defenders can have it. I'm not sure who has it. The defenders who defend anything, or the people who mention him all the time. It's probably both ways a bit. I'm not sure. Anyways.
Okay, so I'm going to do what I always do and be super fucking annoying and start reading things into the record. So I'm also going to say this. I'm going to post these links so people can go here and study. It's one of the most important things as a thinker, as someone who is forming or trying to form a coherent epistemology, that you understand the philosophy of truth, the criteria of truth. And then once you start studying this and understanding it, start examining your own life, start examining the human condition, and start looking at where you are engaging with different kinds of truths in the things you believe and the things you claim to know. Maybe there are things about the past that you don't have good reasons to believe, and you're relying on not correspondence criteria or even coherence, you're relying on truth by tradition, believing in things, let's say, about your family's, that traditions that have been passed down through your family. Like, and sometimes these can be really bad traditions, in my view, as a moral well-beingist. Like, for example, that black people are less civilized. That would be a tradition. You might believe that that's true simply because it's a tradition in your family to believe that. Everybody knows that. Your Uncle John knows that. Your Grandpa Bob knows that. His wife, Jamiroquai, knows that. I don't know why that name came to my mind, but what I'm trying to get at is, it's not always like the lighthearted, benign truths by tradition that you might be holding on to. And sometimes it's hard to examine these things if you don't understand you are doing it. I hope that makes sense. And one of the ways to understand you're doing it is to study and to reach higher levels of education. So, without further dudes, I'm going to read some criteria of truth for you. In epistemology, criteria of truth, or even called in a more traditional sense, tests of truth. It's not called that anymore, but are standards and rules used to judge the accuracy of statements and claims. They are tools of verification. And as in the problem of the criterion, the reliability of these tools is disputed. Understanding a philosophy's criteria of truth is fundamental to a clear evaluation of that philosophy. This necessity is driven by the varying and conflicting claims of different philosophies and philosophers. The rules of logic have no ability to distinguish truth on their own. An individual must determine what standards distinguish truth from falsehood. Not all criteria are equally valid. Some standards are sufficient, while others are questionable. The criteria listed represent those most commonly used by scholars and the general public. So the list I'm going to go through is not necessarily all the criteria of truth that is available in the entire world, but the most common criteria of truth. But a big lesson right off the bat here. You, as someone who's doing value sorting by way of your sentiments, this is Cognitive Science 101 with regards to understanding how our value making and value systems work. So, a really important question is, if you're going to say, well, I value this criteria of truth, or if you want to sit back and state things more dogmatically and say, this is what truth is. Just understand that that is a value born of how you feel about the world within the purview of your experience. That's how you've come to this. And your values could change tomorrow, just like your adherence or preference for a particular criteria of truth could change tomorrow. So let's start. We are locked in here.
Locked in.
Locked in.
Locked in.
Welcome, Mr. Kreinen, to the YouTube chat. So, authority. You've also maybe heard of the logical fallacy, the appeal to authority. This might kind of remind you of that. The opinions of those with significant experience, highly trained, or possessing an advanced degree are often considered a form of proof. Their knowledge and familiarity within a given field or area of knowledge command respect and allow their statements to be criteria of truth. A person may not simply declare themselves an authority, but rather must be properly qualified. Despite the wide respect given to expert testimony, it is not an infallible criterion, of course. For example, multiple authorities may conflict in their claims and conclusions. So, for example, when I'm watching a David Attenborough documentary on dolphins, David Attenborough and the information that is coming from David Attenborough, I am treating as a authority with regards to criteria of truth. Why? Because I am believing what is true that is coming out of the mouth through the screen from David Attenborough. I will suggest to you that every single human being engages with and prefers and values, I should say, criteria of truth by authority. Now, it's really important to distinguish between the criteria of truth of authority and an appeal to authority, as in the fallacy. When I'm accepting information from David Attenborough as true when I'm watching the dolphin documentary, I'm not saying it's true because David Attenborough speaks truth into existence. I'm saying it because David Attenborough is a highly trained, advanced, learned, solid source of information that should be trusted in the kind of information they're delivering is true. Again, that doesn't mean that David Attenborough is infallible in this one example. Examine truth by authority, the criteria of truth of authority in your own life, and think of those around you who you trust. When they tell you something, let's say you have divorced parents and you ended up living with most of your life your mother. And if your mother says something about the way things went down between her and your father, there might be some things within there that you just accept their authority on, because they're a trustworthy source to you. Generally, you generally just believe that they're telling the truth when they tell you things. And of course, if you are in acceptance of these propositions as true, you might go and ask your father whether these things are true, and your father might dispute that. And that may or may not have a great impact, as great of an impact on this other person who you deem to be an authority on the truth of that given situation. So I would suggest that, I know that in some way all human beings are engaging with authority as a criteria of truth. But you can take the David Attenborough example and run with that. And you should have an epistemology that allows for you to do that. It is okay for you to, listen to an evolutionary biology seminar by Richard Dawkins and believe what Richard Dawkins is saying in that seminar as true. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean Richard Dawkins can't get something wrong. But remember, certainty ought not weigh into our epistemological standards, so you can throw that out the window. Just throw it. Get rid of it. We should be referencing confidence levels within our epistemic standards, not any illusions of certainty. Coherence. Coherence, theory of truth, or criteria of truth. Coherence refers to a consistent and overarching explanation for all facts. To be coherent, all pertinent facts must be arranged in a consistent and cohesive fashion as an integrated whole. The theory that most effectively reconciles all facts in this fashion may be considered most likely to be true. Coherence is the most potentially effective test of truth because it most adequately addresses all elements. The main limitation lies not in the standard, but in the human inability to acquire all facts of an experience. Only an omniscient mind could be aware of all the relevant information. A scholar must accept this limitation and accept as true the most coherent explanation for the available facts. Coherence is difficult to dispute as a criterion of truth, since arguing against coherence is validating incoherence, which is inherently illogical. For that very reason, at the end, that is why there is some relationship to coherence in really almost all aspects of the human experience, including truth making. So, in these situations where you don't have access to the empirical goods, all you get, this is the example I like to use, all you get in a particular situation is, let's say, a trusted, or let's not even say a trusted individual. Let's say you get a phone call from someone and they say, and the number when it calls you says unknown. You pick up the phone and they're like, hi, is this, hi, am I speaking with Travis Pangburn? Yes, this is Travis Pangburn. Okay, hi, this is Constable so-and-so. Your friend X has been in a pretty serious car accident, and they're on their way to this particular hospital right now. And you were listed as one of their emergency contacts. Now, right off the bat, there is truth making going on. The interpretations of the things you are hearing is true. What I think is virtuous and valuable in a situation like this is that, given everything that has just happened, in this case, there doesn't seem good reason to question the coherence of what is happening. Is there anything incoherent about that would cause you to think that what is being said to you is untrue? Now, you might add something to this, like, if that friend that they mentioned, and let's say they mentioned the right name, if that friend that they mentioned, you weren't aware that they ever put you down as an emergency contact, you might want to think something like that. But what I'm generally saying here is that most people are going to hear that accept it as true and act on that truth. You're not going to sit there asking for more empirical evidence. You're going to get your shit together and head to the hospital or make necessary arrangements. So it's not out of what is coherent in reality to accept these things. And all you've and if you really look at the empirical, what's empirically available here, the person called you, they knew your number, they knew your name, they knew your friend's name. That's really all you have. Is it likely that you are being scammed here? Like if we're trying to look at this same situation through a correspondence criteria lens, like we're eventually going to get to, you should feel completely justified in believing this to be true. And if you have an epistemology that is going to cause you like unnecessary pause in a situation like this, I think that's a problem. So that is coherence criteria. Let's go to consensus gentium. You might hear in this criteria things related to argumentum ad populum, or argument from popularity. So some view opinions held by all people to be valid criteria of truth. According to consensus gentium, the universal consent of all mankind, all humans holding a distinct belief proves it is true. There is some value in the criterion if it means innate truth, such as the laws of logic and mathematics. If it merely means, as in a unanimous vote, its value is questionable. For example, general assent once held that the sun revolved around the earth. So that at one point was the general consensus, or what was believed to be true by the standard of consensus. Now, consensus in general is a very, very useful system of truth. For those of you who claim to be people who use science as a way of knowing, scientific consensus is one of the most important aspects of science. It is where the falsification process happens, where the philosophy of science is checked, where the work is really checked. And it's so often the case that the people who think they have discovered something important, or think they really have the goods on an unanswered question, and also are the ones who complain constantly about how much they cannot stand the academic process of scientific consensus or peer review or things like this. It's often because their works are failing to survive falsifiability, or the whole enterprise of scientific consensus. So again, I would suggest that all human beings, because all human beings, almost all, use science as a way of knowing. That's just one example of where you rely on truth by consensus. So we have two different kinds of consistency as criteria of truth. We have mere consistency and strict consistency. We'll do mere first. Mere consistency is when correct statements do not contradict, but are not necessarily related. Accordingly, an individual is inconsistent if he does not contradict himself. It is inadequate as a criterion, mere consistency, because it treats facts as an isolated fashion without true cohesion and integration. Nevertheless, it remains a necessary condition for the truth of any argument, owing to the law of non-contradiction. The value of a proof largely lies in its ability to reconcile individual facts into a coherent whole. So some examples here. Paris is the capital of France. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. Jupiter has many moons. Bananas contain potassium. These statements are all true and do not contradict one another. However, they have no explanatory relationship. They are simply a collection of isolated facts. This is what mere consistency is. I hope that makes sense. But one more time again. So, Paris is the capital of France. This statement is true and does not contradict itself. However, I need the other examples for this as well. So Paris is the capital of France. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius at standard atmospheric pressure, I should add. Jupiter has many moons. Bananas contain potassium. So all of these statements are all true and do not contradict each other. But they have no explanatory relationship with one another. They are just a collection of isolated facts. So this is what mere consistency is relating to. So we can look at the example of personal biography. Someone says, I was born in Canada. I enjoy classical music. I own a red bicycle. I drink coffee every morning. Nothing here is contradictory, but the statements do not form an integrated explanation of anything. This is mere consistency. We can give a mathematics example. 2 + 2 = 4. The square root of 16 is 4. A triangle has 3 sides. All are true. None of them contradict each other, yet they do not combine into a mathematical proof or theory. This is merely consistent, or mere consistency. Now let's look at strict consistency once we have that, now that we have that in our head. Strict consistency is when claims are connected in such a fashion that one statement follows from another. So formal logic and mathematical rules are examples of rigorous consistency. An example would be, if all A's are B's and all B's are C's, then all A's are C's. While this standard is of high value, it is limited. So we are going to see this in formal syllogisms as well. Ones that are valid and sound. So for example, the premises are a priori or self-apparent. requiring another test of truth to employ this criterion. Additionally, strict consistency may produce results lacking coherence and completeness. While a philosophical system may demonstrate rigorous consistency with the facts it considers, all facts must be taken into consideration for an adequate criterion of truth, regardless of their determinant to any given system. I'm going to generate some more examples of this one as well.
What's up, everybody? Zemo in the house.
Hey. Yeah, we're just in the middle of some reading here. Welcome.
Gotcha.
Okay, so like classical syllogism, like I mentioned as the first example. Premise 1, all mammals are warm-blooded. Premise 2, all whales are mammals. Conclusion, therefore, all whales are warm-blooded. This is strict consistency because the conclusions necessarily follow the premises. That's why I mentioned earlier.
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
I'll copy and paste it into the chat so you guys can see it. So we're doing kind of a group reading study session on criteria of truth right now, because we are talking about what exactly truth is today. So we're providing a high resolution academic grounding for what truth is today. Not just we're going far beyond when people say like truth is that which comports to reality. Like that's truth 101 stuff. We're doing the advanced dive into truth today. So another example for strict consistency, and again, we're talking now not just mere consistency as a criteria of truth, but strict consistency. So example 2 would be mathematical deduction. So premise 1, if a number is divisible by 4, then it is even. Premise 2, 28 is divisible by 4. Conclusion, therefore 28 is even. The reasoning is deductively valid. So that's example 2. Example 3 for strict consistency. If it rains, the streets become wet. Premise 2, it is raining. Conclusion, therefore the streets are wet. This is an application of modus ponens. If P then Q, P therefore Q is the simple formulation. So these are just some examples. We won't go through all of them. But logical consistency, like formal logical consistency here, is everyone values that. It's really hard, like, to get away from valuing that, and that's usually not where the disagreements are happening. It is true that there is illogic in some systems, but most systems that are well thought out are not trying to, spit in the face of logical consistency itself. There's a really coherent way that we're able to track logical consistency in philosophy. By ways of studying by way of syllogism and studying criteria of truth. So let's go to correspondence. So correspondence is what I make primary, the most virtuous criteria of truth within my system, what I think is most valuable. So, and that is to say, when the things we need to be accurately correspondent to the propositions are available to us. That's not always the case, but let's go through this criteria of truth. Correspondence is quite simply when a claim corresponds with its object. So when you hear people say, I believe that truth is that which comports to or corresponds with reality, this is what they're referencing. And this is often what people think is the only game in town when it comes to criteria of truth. So it's talked about kind of dogmatically. Like it's kind of presented as this is what truth is, often. And there's partly a good reason for that, because it is such a reliable method. That's why I make it primary. So, for example, the claim that the White House is in Washington, D.C. is true if the White House is actually located in Washington. I use the Statue of Liberty as my example. But correspondence is held by many philosophers to be the most valid of the criteria of truth. An idea that corresponds to its object is indeed true, but determining if the correspondence is perfect requires additional tests of truth. And I would also argue that if perfect is to mean have any relationship with certainty, that should be uprooted and thrown out of your epistemic standards. Replace it with levels of confidence. So this indicates that correspondence is a perfectly valid definition of truth, but is not of itself a valid criterion of truth. So what that means is that what other things are being employed, like, for example, strict consistency and coherence and consensus, like scientific consensus, like what are the other things that are being employed by that fundamental principle? And we're going to point to things like empiricism. We're going to point to things like the scientific methodology that takes that correspondence criteria, which is just that simple rule, that which corresponds to reality. And again, as one more example, if someone, if the proposition is gods exist, and we can't correspond that object in reference to reality, then from a correspondence criteria perspective, we ought not accept that proposition as true. So correspondence turns out to be this like amazing kind of first principle of truth. But what makes it work really is what you employ after that. Because you can say that which corresponds to reality. And someone could say, an alchemist turned that, or turned water into gold. And then you could say, well, okay, let's see if the object corresponds to reality. You see gold there, and then you see someone in a blue wizard suit saying, I turned this into gold based on their authority. And then you say, okay, yeah, this is true because the wizard dressed person told me, and there is a bar of gold here. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I have enough to correspond this claim to reality. Obviously, that wouldn't be good sound epistemology or truth making. So it does really matter that you use things like scientific methodology as a way to understand and discern the objects in reference, because that's really what correspondence is dealing with, is the ontology of objects. Custom. And we got a few more to go through, and we will open up. We are talking about truth from an academic perspective today. We are transcending what I feel tend to be very low resolution conversations about truth that I hear. Like, people will just like dismiss a conversation about truth thinking that they've have it all locked in, and not realizing that they employ so many different versions and criteria of truth in their own day-to-day that I think it's just so overlooked in philosophy and in any of the kind of world that would connect to Pangburn, so I think it's important to talk about. Let's look at custom criteria of truth. Most people consciously or unknowingly employ custom as a criterion of truth, based on the assumptions that doing what is customary will prevent error. It is particularly applied in the determination of moral truth and reflected in the statement, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do." People stick closely to the principle of custom when they use common vernacular, where common fashions and so forth. So essentially, when they do, sorry, 1 second. Custom is not, custom is not considered a serious or valid test of truth in and of itself. It is in reference, like for example, public opinion polls do not determine truth. They're determining the truth of that. They're helping determine the truth of that opinion poll, but they are not determining, like, if you put out a poll to the world and it's like, okay, how hot do you think the sun is, or in these particular ranges of temperatures? That ought not determine, it should be the determining factor of what we would consider the truth of that object to be. But just because custom criteria is, and you can think about this in the realm of like what is customary, but just because custom criteria in and of itself can lead to all of this madness doesn't mean that you cannot have a customized framework of truth that gives reference and power to many different kinds of criteria of truth. I'm going to give you guys some examples of this. So like, here's example one. Greeting. Let's do this first, because here's a simplified piece of information. The criterion of custom treats something as true, right, or appropriate because it is the accepted norm or common practice. So, and that can also reference like what criterias of truth are the accepted norms or common practice. So when you hear people saying things like, people have always done it this way, so it must be right or true. When we look at like what the kind of custom criteria we are talking about here in criteria of truth, we're talking about things like greeting customs. So we shake hands when meeting someone because that's what people do. In another country, we bow because that's our custom. Neither custom is objectively truer than the other. Each is simply the accepted social norm. So there are going to be situations where when people will be pulling at this normative space and saying that, well, this is the most true greeting or the most primary greeting that one can make because it's born of their norms, their common practices, and people will treat it and embody it as true. And then we can look at things like moral tradition, wedding traditions, eating habits, business dress code, like how business dress code will look in one culture versus another. So now, in different conversations about criteria of truth, you're going to hear people use custom in some cases, even in academic cases, to mean like a customized collection of different criterias of truth. And they will say, I use custom criteria of truth because I understand, or because they want to make their criteria of truth more particularized, or more open to reacting to particular situations in a nuanced way, for example. But that's not really what we're talking about when we're talking about what is meant by custom in the academic sense. Emotions. Many people allow feelings to determine judgment with regards to truth, often in the face of contrary evidence or without even attempting to collect evidence or facts. They are implicitly accepting emotions as a criterion of truth. Most people will admit that feelings are not an adequate test for truth. For example, a seasoned businessman will put aside his emotions and search for the best available facts when making an investment. Similarly, scholars are trained to put aside such subjective, quote unquote, judgments when evaluating knowledge. Emotions are real, however, and thus must be considered with any social scientific system of coherence. So this one becomes interesting when we start facing the fact that Humean sentimentalism, emotivism, these things seem to be the case based on our best cognitive science modeling, that we are systems that engage in value sorting by way of our emotions. But what this is pointing out is that when it comes to truth, we ought not dig down into our gut emotionality and point and hear a proposition, and for no other reason outside of the emotional effect the proposition has on us when we hear it, then all of a sudden, if you rely on emotions as a criteria of truth, then it seems as though one could be led to really believing anything as true. Because, if you're purely using your emotions with regards to the proposition that gods exist, for example, or that the Christian God exists, let's say that's the proposition, and you're just relying purely on your internal emotionality, it doesn't matter what science has to say about that proposition. It doesn't matter what empirical methods have to say. It doesn't matter what what consensus or other authorities might have to say, even if they're religious authorities. All that matters to you is just that it feels true, and that's enough for you, and that's that. But that's what criteria of truth by emotions looks like. So like we'll see examples of like, I feel it, therefore it must be true. Like we can think about this in more practical examples of people in relationships, right? Someone will be like, my partner is, or I know my partner is cheating on me, they'll say. And then their friend might say, whoa, how do you know that? I just feel it. What is causing this feeling? Like someone, I think reasonable, would ask, like, what do you think is causing this feeling? It's like, it's just a feeling I have. I just have this feeling. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what it is. I just have this feeling. And then someone it just might turn out that feeling about that truth was correct. But if they really had no good reason, just appealing to their feelings, a good question to ask: did they really have a good, sound piece of knowledge there, or was that not good, sound knowledge that just happened to be right in that case? And just because it happened to be right in that case, does that mean it should be employed in other cases? What is Moloch saying? Is Travis still mad at me for being annoying? Moloch, I was never mad at you, brother. Not at all. It's just when you come into a room, just realize there's probably things going on. And, if I sounded sharp when I was trying to continue with my reading, it just had to do with that. I didn't mean to make you feel like you weren't welcome or that you were annoying or anything like that. Fear is a great example. I feel like someone is following me, so someone must be following me, or it is, so that means it is true that someone is following me. The conclusion may or may not be, right? Another example, romantic love. I feel like we're meant to be together, so we must be soulmates, or it is true that we are soulmates, or it is true that we're meant to be together. The emotional experience is genuine. Whether soulmates exist or whether the relationship will succeed is a separate question, right? Investment decisions. I have a really good feeling about this stock, or like in sports, where I am probably most purely emotional in this way, where I get myself thinking like, we just made these trades. I know we were the worst team in the NHL last year, but like with these trades and like the way our roster looks, I mean, we could make the playoffs. Like, now, am I committing to like a serious truth on that? No, but the feelings are very strong. But so basically, I think if we all investigated in our day-to-day when we are appealing purely to emotions as criteria of truth, like someone's following me, like something like that, when it's just, it's not, we wouldn't consider it good, sound epistemology. Most people are not going to consider it good, reliable standards of truth making. Instinct. The existence of distinct instincts has long been debated. Proponents of instinct as a criteria of truth argue that we eat because of hunger, drink because of thirst, and so forth. Some have even argued for the existence of God based on this criterion, arguing that the object of every instinct has a referent in reality. So because we have that instinct, let's say, some people would argue we have that instinct towards God, and that we are, physical beings in a physical world, there must be something physical about that instinct, about where that instinct is coming from. The counterpoint of hunger is food. For thirst, it is liquid. For sex drive, it is a mate. Instincts are not accepted as a reliable test because they are most often indistinct, variant, and difficult to define. Additionally, universal instincts are so few that they offer little to the greater body of philosophy as a criterion. But you might hear people make these kinds of arguments in particular scenarios. So yeah, we used hunger, we used thirst, we used sex drive, parental care. Many parents experience an instinctive urge to protect their child. The instinct corresponds to a real need in offspring and has clear evolutionary value. So when people start making statements like, with regards to truth, it is true this feeling in me is more true than anything else, that I must protect my child. So there is a way that can cross over into the criteria of truth, or into the conversation about truth. Intuition as an assumed truth with intuition is an assumed truth with an unknown or possibly unexamined source. It is a judgment that is not dependent on a rational examination of the facts. It is usually experienced as a sudden sensation or a rush of thoughts that just feel right. Many persons experience intuitive epiphanies, which later prove to be true. Scholars have sometimes come upon valid theories and proofs while daydreaming or otherwise mentally occupied with something bearing no apparent relationship to the truth they seek to reveal. Intuition is at best a source for truths rather than a criterion with which to evaluate them. So that meaning, just to finish this off, intuitive knowledge requires testing by means of other criteria of truth in order to confirm its accuracy. So this is again where I was going to say, if we have this intuition by so many different ways, we can find intuition, or we can have these eureka moments. But then after that might give rise to an interesting hypothesis or something creative. But then the question is, okay, then how are we going to test the strength of this intuition? So again, in and of itself, but people will have intuitions all the time that they can't deny. Like, it kind of reminds me of the Heaven's Gate cult, where Doe, Marshall Applewhite, had this pure emotional intuition towards T. I forget her name, but she was one of the founders of the Heaven's Gate cult. But they had this kind of eureka, mind-blowing, shared epiphany with each other that Doe was Jesus and that she was his father or God. So the question would be, after this, did they take steps to try and, empirically verify? Well, they ask questions, and no, this was so strong within them that they just accepted it to be true. Truth by intuition is one way we could look at what happened to T and Doe. We can look at mathematical insight. A mathematician suddenly thinks, I know this proof will work. Hours later, they formally derive the proof and discover that the intuition was correct. The intuition generated the idea. The proof established its truth. So I've heard of things like pure intuitionism. Thomas, what are your thoughts on intuition with regards to criteria of truth? Do you have any?
We know that based on cognitive science, we know that affect and emotion are the floor of cognition. And so I would say that intuition is not just something to throw away, but as a singular truth criterion on its own, it is necessary, but not sufficient by any means. Right.
Yep. I think that's dead on. We got a few more criteria to go through. There are so many different criteria that exist. But we're going through the more common ones. I mean, I would consider them very common truth failures, most of these. Let's look at majority rule. Majority rule is a statistical method of accepting assertions and proposals. In democratic systems, majority rule is used to determine group decisions, particularly those relating to personal morality and social behavior. Some systems divided into several oppositional factions may depend on pure plurality. While majority rule may make for a good democratic system, it is a poor determinant of truth, subject to the criticisms of the broad version of consensus gentium, which we already went through. But yeah, like if the majority rule states that it is now, it is true now that this other rival civilization that we just crushed never existed. That is now truth. We are determining that as truth. We see a lot of majority rule kinds of truth criteria in North Korea, like things that nothing is wasted in the body of Kim Jong-un. So apparently he doesn't have an anus or has no need for an anus. Like this kind of stuff. Like, so like, and then you'll get statements born out of that, born out of that criteria, sentiments like most people believe it, therefore it is true. So here's an example, a classroom vote, a majority rule. A teacher asks, is Pluto a planet? 25 students vote yes, 5 vote no. The majority vote, of course, does not determine Pluto's astronomical classification, or it should not, right? The teacher would not say, okay, well, majority rules, Pluto is a planet because of that. But yeah, or we can look at, this is a good example, just jury decisions. A jury may decide the defendant is guilty. The legal verdict follows the required voting rule. Whether the defendant actually committed the crime remains an objective question that is independent of the vote itself. That's a very good example. So, if we are saying that, like, oh, I don't believe in majority rule criteria of truth, that seems stupid just because the majority, well, we use that to some degree in our own systems. But I think someone responsible who's using, like what I argue for, correspondence criteria made primary, they would look at that majority rule in the courts and realize that, of course, just because 10 jury members or however many there are voted guilty, that doesn't necessarily mean that is the objective truth of what happened with regards to that crime. But they were convinced beyond reasonable doubt. Naive realism. Realism posits that only that which is directly observable by the human senses is true. First-hand observation determines the truth or falsity of a given statement. Naive realism is an insufficient criterion of truth by many other standards and other opinions. A host of natural phenomena are demonstrably true, but not observable by the unaided sense, right? This kind of reminds me a bit of Marcus, our old friend who used to come through our Discord server here. That like things like, I'm not going to be convinced that the earth is spherical or a spheroid or whatever you want to say, unless I'm able to observe it myself from space. So statements like this. Naive realism would deny the existence of sounds beyond the range of human hearing and the existence of X-rays. Similarly, there are a number of sense experiments which show a disconnect between the perceived sensation and the reality of its cause. Let's look at a few more examples here. If I can see, hear, touch, taste, or smell it, it's real. If I can't, it probably isn't. So example 1, the sun appears to move. Someone observes, I can see the sun moving across the sky, so the sun must orbit the earth. Direct observation suggests this conclusion. Astronomy shows that the apparent motion is largely due to Earth's rotation. Example 2, we kind of just talked about it. The earth looks flat, standing on a beach. The earth looks flat, so it must be flat. The observation is genuine. The conclusion is false because Earth's curvature is too slight to notice over short distances. Air, you cannot see air. A naive realist might say, if I can't see it, why believe it exists? Yet air is easily demonstrated through experiments and indirect observation. Germs, we talk about germ theory of disease. Before microscopes, no one can see bacteria, so they probably don't exist. Modern microbiology shows that microorganisms are real despite being invisible to the naked eye. So a lot of things like this. Yeah, for those on YouTube, I've seen a lot of comments there wondering what's going on. Yeah, I'm just going through the information with regards to criteria of truth. We're doing a full deep dive into high resolution academics on the concept of truth. And then we will eventually open up to some questions. Pragmatic criteria of truth. If an idea works, then it must be true to the pragmatist. The consequences of applying a concept reveal its truth value upon examination of the results. The full meaning of an idea is self-apparent in its application. For example, the therapeutic value and effect of penicillin in relation to infections is proven in its administration. Although pragmatism is considered a valuable criterion, it must be used with caution and reservation due to its potential for false positives. For example, a doctor may prescribe a patient medication for an illness, but it could later turn out that a placebo is equally effective. Thus, untrue concepts could appear to be working contrary to the purpose of the pragmatic test. However, it has validity as a test, particularly in the form of William Hawking called negative pragmatism. In essence, it states that ideas that do not work cannot possibly be true, though ideas which do work may or may not be true. So, yeah, I mean, there's obvious reasons as to why you need to employ correspondence criteria, scientific methodology in these situations. So pragmatists, Peirce, Dewey, Charles Sanders Peirce, John Dewey, William James, these are people I cite in my book, by the way, argued that the practical consequences of a belief are central to evaluating it. So we gave the penicillin example. GPS systems rely on highly precise physical theories. They consistently guide millions of people to their decisions. Their practical success supports the reliability of the scientific principles involved. Now, that's an example of where things go well. Let's look at lucky socks with regards to athletes. Lucky socks. An athlete wears the same socks before every game. They win repeatedly. I just have to check one thing really quickly here. Sorry. So they win repeatedly. The athlete concludes, these socks bring me luck. The ritual appears successful. The causal explanation is almost certainly false. Superstition with regards to pragmatic criteria of truth. Someone says, every time I carry this crystal, good things happen. The occasional successes reinforce the belief. Coincidence or confirmation bias may explain the apparent effectiveness. Financial markets. An investor follows an incorrect theory. The market rises anyway. The investor makes money. The success may reflect luck rather than a true understanding of economics. I hope that's clear. Three more criteria, and then we'll talk a little bit about this. Revelation. The principal distinction between intuition and revelation is that revelation has an assumed source, God or another higher power. Revelation, as a criteria of truth, may be defined as truth emanating from God. Many religions fundamentally rely on revelation as a test of truth. This criterion is subject to the same criticisms as intuition. It may be a valid reference of truth for an individual, but it is inadequate for providing a coherent proof of the knowledge to others. So I think that one's pretty clear. I don't think we need to go into too much more detail on that. Time as a criteria of truth. Time is a criterion commonly appealed to in things like debate, often referred to as the test of time. This criterion posits that over time, erroneous beliefs and logical errors will be revealed, while if the belief is true, the mere passage of time cannot adversely affect its validity. Time is an inadequate test of truth since it is subject to similar flaws as custom and tradition, which are simply specific variations of the time factor. Many demonstrably false beliefs have endured for centuries and even millennia. Many demonstrably false beliefs have endured for centuries and even millennia. Vitalism, for example. It is commonly rejected as a valid criterion. For example, most people will not convert to another faith simply because the other religion is centuries or even millennia older than their current beliefs. Or else we would see what were the ancient Sumerians believing in? That would just take the cake every time. Older.
The Anunnaki.
The Anunnaki. There you go. Now let's end with tradition. Tradition as a criteria of truth. Tradition which is closely related to custom or customs. I still think this should be called customs criteria of truth, plural, but is the standard stating that which is held for generations is true. Those accepting tradition argue that ideas gaining the loyalty multiple generations possesses a measure of credibility. Tradition possesses many of the same failings as custom. It is possible, at least, for falsehoods to be passed down from generation to generation, since tradition generally emphasizes repetition over critical evaluation. For example, Holocaust denial theories that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. We see examples of this. And it is believed to be true that the Holocaust is exaggerated or never happened or staged, whatever. So yeah, I'm going to post this again. One of the most important things you can do as a thinker is to become fluent and articulate when it comes to criteria of truth. And you don't have to understand and learn all criteria of truth, but understand what you make primary, what you think is the most important criteria of truth that should trump all other criteria of truth when it is available. Put your flag in the ground. What do you value most and why here with regards to truth? It's not enough if we're trying to be academic and high resolution to simply say truth is that which comports to reality. That does nothing for us in a high resolution sense. It's not furthering our understanding of the human condition. What does further our understanding of the human condition is starting to look at the different categories of truth that all human beings are engaging in on a day-to-day basis. You can say that you make correspondence criteria primary, but when someone says, yeah, but what if you get a phone call, like an emergency call, or like there are things that happen that you're just accepting as true without having any kind of corresponding empiricism, modeling, any way for you to figure out whether or not the proposition matches the objects in reality. Sometimes you just have to act. And that is why there are things we make primary, secondary, but we do this kind of automatically without understanding what we're doing. And I think it's really important for us to understand what we're doing with regards to truth. Thomas, do you have anything you want to say about truth? I would like for you to talk also about like truth from a holographic perspective as well. That would be cool.
Yes. Just in general, I mean, I'm going to use a lot of systems and network theory ontology language because I look at philosophy in general as systems ontology and network ontology. But in general, you went, I mean, like I've been over that Wikipedia page and the Stanford, like years and years ago, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to memorize this thing. But like in general, you covered all of it. But the main thing to remember is that if we want to be very colloquial about it, coherence, correspondence, and pragmatic theories of truth are all necessary. Trying to make it one-dimensional is the problem. And you already brought that up with correspondence being like the 101 thing. Oh my God, yes, of course it's what corresponds to reality kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But in general, you're going to look at coherent, like philosophical coherence or metaphilosophical coherence is the idea of having that logical, mere and strict consistency, that completeness, and also that mutual constraint, mutual entailment is what they call it. So those things need to be there in order for you to do anything within the nature of inquiry. That's why I said metaphilosophy. And so coherence is very necessary. It is foundationally necessary. And so if we can't have a consistent and mutually entailing system that is comprehensive and has, high coherence is what they call it in philosophy, then we can't even really technically start anywhere in terms of building a system, right? Obviously, in my idea, this is where it comes in. The coherence theory of truth, if you want to be a bit colloquial, is the map. The correspondence theory of truth is the territory. And we have to have the map in order to understand how the territory changes, but it's dynamic.
Yep. And,
I call it snapshot metaphysics.
And you know what? That we could also, in this analogy, call consistency maybe the pathways within the territory and the map. Yeah,
I like logical the analogy. Consistency is necessary. Yeah, it's a good analogy. So logical consistency, as you brought up already, mere and strict, is going to be, I mean, like, a lot of, I won't go into that. There's too much. But in general, what the main issue about making it one-dimensional is because you fall into naive correspondence, as you said, or pure coherence, which could be delusional as hell. I can make a very consistent, mutually entailing, and comprehensive system about Harry Potter. They did.
Oh yeah.
And so therefore does it map onto the nature of reality? Some people will argue with idealists and stuff. I'm not going down that route. There are also theories of truth called deflationary theories. I mean, they're important to look into, but in terms of, living daily life, it doesn't truly help us in any way that I can tell. Maybe we can go into that some other time. But the whole point is that raw pragmatism as well. I also want to bring that up. Like, just because, these three by themselves don't seem to work. And it doesn't really seem to be how humans operate. It seems as though they're building a map and understanding the territory simultaneously. We know this through cognitive science. And so I would say if somebody is freezing the map and then letting the territory change underneath them without attempting to update the map, that's what I call snapshot metaphysics. Mm-hmm. So that would be a problem of making it one-dimensional and non-dynamic. So, truth in the way that I understand it is a multi-scale stability pattern that persists across correspondence, coherence, and pragmatist engagement under ongoing constraints in the territory, right? Mathematical constraints. And so, it's not a snapshot, it's not a declaration, it's not a final verdict. It's something that keeps holding over time while being tested from within that system over time. It's in truth, in this sense, is what survives recursive contact with reality, because the map and the territory have to adjust to each other. And so the pragmatics part, of course, is the functional part of what we see, what we feel, what we touch, that kind of things in general in day-to-day life. And does the map and territory actually allow me to live my life? We'll go back to the Harry Potter example. But in general, we're, well, there's so much to say. I don't even know. I don't want to just overload, but like in general, that's the whole point. We don't want to just use one. They're called the inflationist theories of truth: correspondence, pragmatic, and coherence.
Oh yeah.
The deflationary, yeah. So that's the important part.
I mean, to me, deflationary is just trying to like,
it's hand
kind of hand wave the concept of truth away and say that reference to the facts in and of themselves is enough. We don't need that like the truth part, which is, I would say, it is what we make valuable with regards to truth is ultimately born of our sentiments. So that is a problem that the deflationary people have, and they think that means we can hand wave it, and it's irrelevant to what these sentimental beings are saying what's true. What really matters is the facts. I have, it's not that I have no sympathy, because I do understand the problems of the problems of the criterion, the problems of criteria of truth, but those things are only problems really if we take truth to be some game of certainty or some like, so it's I look, I understand why the hand waving of truth is done, but it is such an important aspect phenomenologically of the human condition that I think to not give it its due seriousness is to do the opposite thing of what we're trying to do today. It kind of reminds me of what the global skeptics do with regards to epistemology. They will say, sorry, I should say with regards to knowledge, we could say they will say, oh, we can't have knowledge because you can't have absolute certainty. So they are going to quit. They're going to stop playing the game. And I think that discounts the importance of having these tools in our toolkit that ultimately help us to better and more accurately serve our purposes. So it doesn't make sense when people hand wave them away for that reason. But
it seems ridiculous, but the nature of academic philosophy is that we're going to cover every possible piece of ground that we can, even if it's nonsense, right? Yeah. So the reason why deflationary theories came, there's like 6 or 7. The reason why they came into the forefront is because all 3 of the inflationist models are circular, right? The correspondence one would be map territory circularity, but like, how can you know the map if you don't know the territory? The territory is there. How can you know the map? Like they're all pragmatic coherence. The difference is, though, when you're talking about philosophical coherence, under those systemic rules, what was I saying? What did you just? Oh, yes, deflationary. I jumped there for a minute. So so it was made from like idealists and all these different kind of people to say that we don't have to have an inflationist theory, and they're circular anyway. Well, all the deflationist ones are also circular, so it becomes a big problem. But in general, I do believe it's hand waving. It's the same thing that people try to do with consciousness. Be like, well, let's just delete the problem, then there's no problem. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. You can say that it does because you can have a coherent system and still be delusional, right? Yeah, and also, I can have all kinds of like reality contact with a coherent system and still be a conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
So
100%. And then we can
I don't want to babble forever.
No. Yeah. This is great stuff.
I mean, I love this. I just don't want to bore people to death.
No, I want to today. I want to bore people to death today. I want to pull them into,
a quick question to Thomas.
Yes, please.
The system is the coherence, and the correspondence is the map. And the map and the territory are both the same. Is there something separate for the territory, or is the map and the territory, they're both one and the same?
So you accidentally messed up and said correspondence is the map. Coherence is the map. Correspondence is the territory. That is a very colloquial connection. If we get into the systems ontology of it, it gets a lot more complex. But in general, yeah, the map is having a coherent logical system in your mind and then mapping that to the territory of your body in the world.
Okay, so the coherence isn't the system.
Coherence is the system, yes.
Okay, that's what I said first. That's what I first said. Coherence is a system, and correspondence is not.
I apologize.
Coherence is the system. Correspondence is the map. I was just wondering if there's something.
Territory.
If there's something.
The coherence is the map, and the correspondence is the territory.
Yes, and consistency would be the direct lines and pathways.
I just want to know if the map and the territory are the same. Is all I'm asking.
What was that again? Say it one more time, David.
I'm just asking if the map and the territory, they're both one and the same.
They are two sides of the same coin, and to say that they are completely separate would be some dualist garbage that I wouldn't hold.
Okay. So what is the territory? What would, like, if correspondence is the map, what would you call it? What's another word for the territory? Is it pragmatism? Is that what the territory is?
It's a little bit more complicated of an answer than that, but you keep on saying correspondence is the map. It's the territory when we're talking about this in a colloquial sense.
Coherence, Niv.
Pragmatic theory of truth, if we're looking at it from just the systems level, is the reality contact that continually updates to you and says, yes, this is working based on the constraints around you.
Yeah, I like everything that you're saying. I'm just trying to match each thing with...
No, you're good. You're good. It's okay. It's not bad questions. It's just be careful on the language. You know what I mean? Because it is very important when we're talking about at the systems level. So.
Okay. So the map and the territory aren't the same. So what would we call it? What would the territory? What would be another word for the territory? That's why I asked.
Reality. Reality that is not internal to your mind.
Okay, I get.
I mean, the mind is created from the brain, as far as I know. So it's map territory this is where it gets weird.
Map territory. I like that. Yeah. I'm just trying to like be on the same page as all.
I'm creating an image, Niv. I'm creating an image of this right now because I think you are somewhat of an imagistic learner as well. So
multimedia learning is the best way.
The map and the territory doesn't necessarily mean that they're exactly the same. The territory is the reality. I get you, and the map is what you drew coming from the coherence, which is a system.
Yeah, you can look at it that way. You totally can. Like wandering through a forest, I mean, without any type of map, right? You can build the map as you go. If you want to think about it that way. That's a little bit too linearly. I mean, it's happening simultaneously in terms of cognitive science. So, we are testing the world as we are creating and changing the map in our minds.
Yeah, I get the importance of the coherence in having a system so everybody can be on the same page, right?
Yes. Coherence by itself is necessary, very much so, but not sufficient because we can have delusional coherent systems.
Yeah.
Like conspiracy theories. Not all of them, obviously, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. And based off of that delusional system, everything else that follows would be crap, right? It's like a bad way of navigating the ocean, right?
It couldn't map anything outside of its own system. A good coherent system can map many things and take in new data and can change accordingly. That's a part of completeness is what they call it. I mean, that's more of a mathematical term, but just in general, being complete and revisable and like non-brittle is a big thing in high coherent systems.
So if you look at the image here, Niv, like the important outline on the bottom right corner, coherence gives us a comprehensive map. Consistency ensures our paths are logical and reliable, and correspondence grounds us in what is real. So kind of imagistically depicted there.
That is very helpful, by the way. It's a great teaching tool in terms of map territory stuff. Very much so.
Is AI that?
Yep.
It's very good at making images.
He used Microsoft Paint.
He wrote it real quick.
No, I was wondering if that was out of a book or he just AI'd that.
No, I just generated it.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Good.
I feel like a lot of these criterias are necessary but not sufficient on their own.
Bingo.
Correct. Yeah.
So real quick before I dropped my Davies, my Davy Joneses. We were talking about custom criteria of truth, and what I thought I recollected was not that it's like a customary thing, like when in Rome, or like Marcus's family tradition criteria of truth, but it's like, a custom build your own car.
So
like,
yeah, that's why. So in the conversations, I tried to outline when I was reading that this, and I just posted it right here. This is from Wikipedia, and this is correct when we're talking about, and I still think this should be called customs criteria of truth, plural, but there is this with regards to what is customary and how that leads to like social truths and things like that. Like it is true that this is the customary way to greet someone, and someone would be like, well, why is that true? Well, who created that truth? It's like, well, society did, but by way of norms. And so there's right. That, but within the conversation about criteria of truth, when people are building, what they make primary, what their system looks like, people will use language of like, well, I use a custom criteria of truth that pulls from all of these different things. I would say that like that isn't really an academic way of talking about it, but it's understandable. Like if you said that in a philosophy seminar, like, my custom piecemeal together group criteria of truth includes these things, people are going to understand what you're talking about. Some real pedantic dicks might be like, well, custom criteria actually refers to like norms and some like public duties and things like this. Sure. It doesn't have to do with, so yeah, it's whatever.
I like, I'm so down for not using homonyms, as you know.
Yeah.
But I like the wrong one, because I think everyone has that type of piecemeal, make your own, articulate your own way of figuring out what do you make primary, secondary, tertiary. But yeah, in physics, like T, it means like can mean 4 or 5 different things. So I get the homonymous usage of language. So I guess I'll try and keep it short. What are some things that struck me as interesting? So you really got to be a fallibilist when you're deploying any of these things.
Yes.
For example, like the consensus gentium. Is that how you pronounce this? Gentium?
Yep.
Gentium. It's like, we all believe that the earth was flat at one point, or now we all believe, well, not all of us believe that the earth revolves around the sun. It's good to have this piecemeal, plural criterias of truth, because, if all of a sudden correspondence shows that there's this Michael Jackson particle that's affecting, whatever physics is going on, then that would completely just break the whole consensus gentium truth that may be universal at that time. So you really got to be a fallibilist.
That's why I make it my necessary constraint on epistemology, because if you go into epistemics with any level of stringency or rigidity, that is when people are going to start making mistakes, constant mistakes, because they're really not employing their full fallibilistic selves, and what that means academically, of course, meaning that they should bring their full selves to epistemology. That means never should you have feelings anymore about mentioning certainty and certainty posturing within epistemics? If you still have those tendencies, you're not bringing an academic fallibilist posture, because fallibilism in an academic sense is talking about being able to achieve knowledge without any mention of certainty. So if you are mentioning it, or you have these tendencies towards certainty still, you haven't divorced it. And I think it can be hard to divorce if you don't understand if you can't articulate the underlying logic as to why certainty is almost certainly unattainable. If you cannot articulate that underlying logic, it's not enough just to like believe what Travis says about certainty almost certainly being unattainable. It's not enough. You need to be able to articulate to yourselves and to others why that is the case, or else you're going to have a hard time maintaining fallibilism. Like if you can't articulate the basic problem in that, like, okay, yeah, you have this incontrovertible truth that you're grasping onto, let's say the logical absolutes, and then people come along and they're like, yeah, I mean, I know and this isn't for you, Perry, this is just to people who might be listening for the first time, but because I say this all the time, but it's like, so if you say, yeah, I have this incontrovertible truth, and then someone comes along and says, yeah, but isn't it at least at some level possible that could be overturned tomorrow? And then they say no, and then you say, well, why no? And then they say, well, can you come up with a way it could be overturned? And then you say, no, I can't. Well, can I? No. Can everyone else? No. And then you could stand there and saying, yeah, like we haven't yet, but couldn't we at least possibly tomorrow? No. So because we haven't done it yet, we could never contradict this thing tomorrow. And then you eventually start realizing that is grounded in a naturalistic fallacy. It's just the argument from incredulity fallacy. So, the argument from incredulity, I think, is where all dogmatisms should die. But some people will dig their heels on arguments from incredulity and say, not all arguments from incredulity should be divorced. They should be, held up as dogmatic achievements. And I would just say, I just think it's just classical logic just shows us that we shouldn't commit to things like that.
You'd almost have to hold the position that we're at the apex, like humanity is at the apex of their knowledge, to say that tomorrow we can't conceive of something new, which is interesting. So, and the other side of the certaintist position, you had already made reference to, like global skepticism in regards to consensus gentium. You don't want to conflate fallibilism with it's wrong. You don't want to conflate it could be wrong and it is update to revision with it is wrong. Exactly. You don't want to fall into some pessimistic meta-induction just because, science has gone through all of these paradigm shifts and we've learned new things and discarded other things, that we shouldn't have credence to hold a belief in whatever knowledge claim we're making. So make sure not to do that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's see what else you mentioned. Strict and mere. I hear a lot of mere consistency going on when people are either riffing or making an argument for something. Yes. They'll bring up all of these unrelated facts, and I have to do jungle gym gymnastics to try and charitably piece together how it is that these facts are connecting with each other. Yeah. So, and then I guess, on strict consistency.
So Perry, just one thing before you move on to strict. Mere consistency is where conspiracy theories go to boil. go to cook.
Oh yeah.
You know,
sure.
mere consistency is like where people will take all of these long lists of facts that everyone will agree, yeah, those are facts. And then they'll do the conspiratorial line drawing to this conclusion. And then the question is, wait a second, I was with you that all these things are facts, but then you said it's related to, you know, lizard folk in the Oval Office. How did you get there? It's like, well, if you consider like that this could possibly be of lizardry.
Exactly.
This could possibly be of lizardry. This could be of lizardry. All of these, like, doesn't that seem coherent to you that you know, all of these things are of lizardry, and they all could possibly connect back to this underlying fact that the shape shifting we see on TV, you know, is true, like that kind of crap.
Yeah, I almost normatively want to hold the dogmatic position that no, it can't be the case that these things connect, because it's almost like they may hear a fallibilist say, yeah, I'm sure modally it could be ding, ding, ding. That's my affirmation for the night. I can sleep well now.
The could-beists, the could-beists, those who use could-be's in their epistemics, who, of course, are making a drastic error, and they don't realize that could-be's are not even shouldn't even be relevant for good hypothesis making, like for science, for example. You want more than could-be's. If you were going to be spending your fucking money investigating a scientific hypothesis or a mathematical one or physical, like whatever, any kind of hypothesis, you want to know that it's more than just simply possible. You want to know that it is at some level likely to be the case. Even if it's at a small level, you want it to be at some level to likely be the case. So once you have something that's like, you know, you can justify there's a likelihood behind it, then there you go. You have a little background noise there, Niv.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing, Niv, and then I'll hand the mic over to you. On strict consistency? Yeah, strict consistency.
Yeah.
Keep wanting to say contingency. That's been on my mind lately. So strict consistency, you and I were quibbling about sound. Not the sound waves sound, but whether something is sound or not.
Yeah.
And so this I feel like we start, and I would want to ask you again, if we're using sound differently when we're talking about, is it valid and sound, or is it the same as making a sound judgment as we were discussing on the wisdom topics? But that seems to be where strict consistency lives, is when it's connected, it's valid, it's sound, so on. And so I'd like to hear what your thoughts on
the soundness is going to, like, if we're talking about like formal syllogisms, right? Soundness is going to not only be within a valid system, but also be demonstrably true by way of logic, right? So that's why like when we were talking about logical consistency the other day, or sorry, logical soundness, we were talking about
logical, that's right.
That there are different ways, different kinds of language we can use with regards to soundness, and logically sound would simply mean true by way of logic.
That's fair.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yep.
And
so I think this is where strict consistency, where conspiratorial line drawing goes to die, when these sort of things are being deployed. So
and of course, and then with regards to soundness, if we're saying, like, talking about sound argumentation, a sound argument does guarantee a true conclusion. And again, when we're talking about true in this sense. We're talking about true by logical standards of truth. So, which would of course be employed by like if you're trying to correspond propositions to the objects in reality, of course you're going to want to make sure your processes, like science is a way of knowing, for example, if science did not pass the test of logical soundness, or if it was not operating on sound empiricism, then we would have good reason to throw it away, and it would almost certainly not give prediction like it does.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every scientific system has coherence and correspondence. That's the whole point. And like the whole enterprise of science is pragmatic.
Yeah.
So
also consensus and consistency and yeah,
I'm not just in general. Like the theory of evolution is a coherently consistent and mutually aligned and connected system that maps directly, correspondently to the territory of reality.
Think also think about the level of pragmatism as a criteria of truth, pragmatic criteria of truth. Think of how baked that is into the philosophy of science.
Well, I mean, that is what Pearson all them said was the nature of science is usefulness, right? This is the whole point. And so
serving purposes,
if you're looking
right?
at, exactly, and obviously, like in terms of instrumentalism in science, pragmatics need to be rebuilt a little bit because we're talking about truth guiding action successfully across time horizons without hidden collapses in the coherence of the system or in the correspondence, whatever it may be, right? And so brief short-term success does not count. What counts is the predictable reliability, obviously, the reversibility under error, the fallibility of the system. That's predicated on it. So the survivability of correction. This is where I mentioned earlier about the matching, basically being able to explain all the facts in a reasonable way. And so if you cannot correct and it's brittle, it doesn't have high coherence, then it's not going to survive that correction. You're going to have to redo the whole system, or you're going to put a new theory in the system that breaks a lot of the other parts. So that's the long-term stability is the whole point. So truth earns its keep by not betraying you later. That's the whole point, And so that's why the triad must operate together, because a belief is truth-apt only when correspondence, coherence, and pragmatics remain jointly satisfied under that ongoing challenge that we just talked about. So not perfect, not finally, sustainably. So truth is intersectional stability between those things.
Yeah, well, very well said. And I think like something I've become most interested in with regards to studying truth is that gaming of where human beings are making particular criteria of truth primary and why in those moments. And it just and it's like when people claim that like truth to them is more important than anything, I call foul on that so hard, because I see people engaging in criteria of truth sorting based on what their sentiments, based on that value sorting of their sentiments by way of valuing different kinds of truth, but that's in service of good, bad, right, and wrong, their notions of that in the world. So I'm sorry. People try to do that all the time, to say as though we can just, analytically and only rationally observe facts. No, we cannot. Ethics are directly baked. I mean, they're the same thing in essence, two sides of the same coin, but there's many sides to philosophy. In saying, and just to maybe add a statement at the end of that, I think our relationship to truth is one of the most purely emotional relationships we have.
Yes, I mean, affect is the floor of cognition, emotion, feeling, and sentiment rise up through those layers. So if our affect is based, not control, it is technically controlling our cognition, right? It is what the system rises from. But control is an interesting word here. Time is the hidden axis here, right? a lot of philosophers will do the snapshot metaphysics and say, is this true? Okay. Does this stay true is the question I care about.
Yeah.
Because time when it comes to truth reveals these delayed consequences and hidden contradictions and slow erosion of the high coherence of the system. Then we see convergence patterns. We can tell which ones converge towards usefulness, which ones don't, things like that. So a belief that requires insulation from evidence or suppression of dissent or constraint, narrative repair, that kind of stuff is not true in the triadic sense. It's truth can age, and good truth ages well. You know what I mean? That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's great stuff. Well, anyone who's just joined us, what up, Ding Dong? What's shaking?
Hello. Good night.
Good night.
I'm kind of shocked. I didn't see. I missed this earlier. I kind of took a little nappy nap on the couch.
Had a little siesta.
I love
it.
I like to talk about truth. I was like, truth is I think you, Thomas, Perry, and I have been speaking about for years now on end with one another.
Years and years.
Yep.
Simply being a part of this community changed a lot of how I even think about truth. I know Thomas just invoked coherence, correspondence, and pragmatism, and a type of synthesis of all three, and that's something all four of us have been discussing for a very long time.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. I think these things really are inescapable. I think when we look at criteria of truth, the reason why we have this long ass list of these different criteria of truth is because we have abstracted from the ways human beings have played the truth game and have just kind of given it this criteria of truth ontology. And it's not like it's been dictated by some god and written down. These are just abstracts that have been made based on what's been observed in human behavior. So I don't think we can really escape any of these, and almost certainly at some point in our lives we've fallen prey to less primary or less successful criteria of truth in service of probably other values.
A quick
I
thing.
was thinking, Don earlier, the call-in days, when I was a wee lad, I wanted to say, I remember Thomas giving me the business on what correspondence was, and then we went to coherence, and I'm like, I was a wee lad and thinking in over generalities, black and white. I'm like, oh shit, I agree with both of these things, like, but I got to pick one or the other. Like, oh God, what am I going to do? So it was a memory.
When you first the philosophical stuff, like snapshot metaphysics are like you will encounter binaries, but once you, like, it's looking at the top of the ocean, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but there's much deeper. And so that's when we understand that we have to have a synthesis between some kind of triadic truth criteria, because otherwise we're saying, I don't need coherence, I don't need a map, I don't need the territory, and I don't care if it works. I mean, like, this is the issue. Everything that Travis read off of that Wikipedia page, all of those are technical. Well, some of them aren't, but most of the main ones are necessary in most of science and philosophy. And so,
but not sufficient on their own.
Exactly. Sufficiency is where we have to use the synthesis of all of this, and we have to understand that they are operating dynamically. That's the thing. The time axis is what I brought up a moment ago. That's the most important one. Does it stay true? Does it stay true? Because brief short-term success could be in error.
Yeah, and I would say, like, where, like, even in the philosophy of science, you're going to see tradition as a truth criteria employed with regards to the kinds of ontologies that currently exist in science. Like when someone comes along and suggests that we change a particular taxonomy or conceptual organization, sometimes the only argument you have is appealing to a truth by tradition, like and a bit of pragmatism. It's like, we've been doing the philosophy of science this particular way by way of this ontology for this long. A lot of people are going to be satisfied with the idea that maintaining this tradition and maintaining the truth of this tradition has a lot of like resource value in that in the curriculum all around the world and within your country, this is kind of baked into how teachers teach and into the textbooks and all this stuff. Sometimes necessary things are going to happen. Like we could even point to the delineation between sex and gender, like 25 years ago in the academic literature. That was a pretty major taxonomic update. And that comes with some cost. So it's interesting to think about like, what costs are too high where academia or philosophers of science would lean heavily towards like, this is a beehive not worth kicking because of the sheer resource effect values again. But.
Yeah.
On talking about charity, I think it's important. It might not seem like it is, like it's just something that's being given away, but people should take that into mind when they're talking to another person, because they could have been charitable to you, and getting where you're coming from and listening to what you have to say, and people have their unique experiences. People are different. They're not all a bunch of yous. So
what Niv, may I ask, like, what is that branching off of? I want to understand the connection you're making.
Well, okay, to simplify, it's kind of like people have their own truths, and they're not like you. And people sometimes like a Bob would misunderstand, like, and not everybody's a bunch of Bobs. They don't see and experience and perceive like you do, and that gets lost in translation in communicating with one another. And because of that, people aren't interested in hearing what the other have to say. It's kind of like a bat that have a different sense talking to another animal that has a different sense, thinking they're both crazy because what they're talking about doesn't exist. Well, yeah, one wouldn't exist to the other, and by being open and being charitable and just listening, you could end up coming to a conclusion and saying, "Oh, okay, you have this sense and I have that sense, and you so you therefore see things this way, and I see things that way. So we are both, because we're both different creatures and we both have different experiences. That means we'd have both different perceptions, and that gets lost at times. And where a person just heads up the butt and they don't get that, it's kind of like if a person is trying to, who's in a sundown town, for an example, they're trying to explain their experience to a person who grew up in that town. They'll think they're fucking crazy and they're just being like paranoid and shit, but they blow them off. But it should be taken into consideration, like, listening to what the person have to say, and sometimes the person doesn't even know that the charity that they want to be given to them is a result of the charity that they gave to you, because they're responding to what you said and listened to what you said, instead of just disregarding it and blowing it off and thinking like, well, I don't really see what I don't really see what this person is saying. It doesn't make sense to me, so I'm going to just write it off. I think people are too quick to write things off and not listen to what other people have to say, because they can't relate to it. And yeah, they're a fucking different person than you, and you should take that into account.
Yeah, I think you're saying
that brings conversations down, and then more than people realize.
I think you're saying a virtuous thing, like it's important to be charitable, to other people's notions, and to not just shit on them, and it's okay to entertain things that we disagree with. I think that's kind of the sentiment you're getting at, and I agree with you, Niv. Yep.
it's like if a long explanation was given, and then it's like, okay, well, a lot of errors were there. That means that might mean I have to have a long reply. I don't want to have a long reply, but I listened what you had to say, and then I have this to say as a result of what you just said. It's not about what I'm not about me being that way. And I think at times things just
Is this still related to truth though, or are you
Yeah.
more?
So
Or
what
are
do you
you
think
more
about
talking?
truth, Niv? I'd like to hear what you have to say about the topic tonight.
Well, I was addressing truth. I was saying that creatures being different, they experience things that others can't say, which is truth. And I said like a different animal that have a different sense will pick up something that another animal can't pick up, which is
Right,
truth.
I remember. So what would you say that you hold?
I'm referring to truth, that people have their different experiences, their different truths, and so they should listen to what the other have to say in communicating instead of dismissing it.
So what would you hold primary as a criteria of truth? Would you say, Niv?
Primary to listen. That's pretty much what I was trying to say. And being charitable.
So, well, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. We went over a lot of different criterias of truth for about an hour. Do any of those particular ones resonate with you more than the others? Do you feel like maybe you use?
Well, I think I'm referring to incredulity with what you guys was mentioning in regards to.
Oh, you're
in regards to dismissing a person.
the example. Sorry, Nev. I just wanted to clear. You're talking about the example I gave, the argument from incredulity fallacy, when people are, saying that I'm going to hold on to this dogma because nobody has come up with a contradiction yet. So that means I believe it's impossible that anyone will ever come up with a contradiction. Yeah. So
yeah, their minds are locked, and I was trying to explain like why their minds are locked, because like they're uniquely this way. They're exposed to this amount of this certain information, and they have a unique experience, and therefore they think like everybody is a bunch of Bobs, like they're Bob, and you can't just think that way when it comes to communicating with others, and think just because you can't see it, or can't be done. Like people have to get past themselves at times.
I think we all agree with that norm, that sentiment that you're giving. So you brought up incredulity as like a criteria of truth. Could you expand on that and tell us how you use that in like your everyday truth seeking?
No, I was referring to like a person being stuck in their way and saying, "Well, this is."
I think can I just say, like, I don't think Niv was bringing that up as a criteria of truth. I think he was just making a comment on.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think he was just making a comment on that phenomena of dogmatism.
Well,
and
let me ask again then, Niv, what would you say that you hold like primary, as we went over a bunch of different criterias of truth for the past hour? Do any of those kind of resonate with you without reference to what you were talking about just before?
Oh, I wasn't really. My intent wasn't to bring up the like anything that resonates with me in what's true. It was just when the credulity was mentioned. And
I don't think that's my question. We don't have to. We can go past it.
No. I said I'm addressing your question. I get that people are talking about like what resonated with them in the criterias, and I was saying based off what was said in the past with the credulity and
without reference,
and giving. Well, it is. I'm referencing because this was said, right? Like it's
Yeah, I'm saying, but you said it. I'm saying, if you can give us
Okay, never mind.
any of the goods, how do you feel? Here, I'll ask a more
I'm
direct
not sure what
question.
you're getting at.
How do you feel about something like correspondence theory of truth? You brought up kind of the coherence correspondence thing that Thomas said earlier. How do you feel about correspondence theory of truth? Do you feel like you use that often? Do you feel like you use other things like pragmatism more often than correspondence?
Yeah,
How
with
would you
Thomas,
go?
I was just I liked what he was saying, particularly with the map when he was saying like, well, you start with the coherence, which is the system, and then the correspondence, which would be the map that you're navigating
The
yourself on.
territory, the coherence would be the map.
Oh, I thought
for anyone who wasn't
the
here.
coherence is the system. The correspondence is the map.
No,
We
Niv,
corrected you a bunch of times.
So I reposted the image, but for anyone that wants to look at the image, this was just a little image I generated with regards to the map, direct pathways and territory that Thomas and I were talking about. But yeah, anyways, it's a good reference image there, Niv, if you want to hold on to that one. But yeah, correspondence criteria, Niv, just as a recap, is the principle that
where's the system?
when what
the map it started off with
the system
then
no the system, I think you introduced the system, or maybe Thomas did, I don't know, but what we eventually landed on was that coherence could be viewed as the map itself, consistency could be viewed as the direct pathways, and then correspondence could be the territory. And if you look in the bottom right corner, it says coherence gives us a comprehensive map, and this is all related to truth, by the way. So we could say map of truth. Consistency ensures our paths are logical and reliable with regards to truth, and then correspondence grounds us in what is truly real. Yeah, that is right. The yeah, exactly. The top writing doesn't correspond to the actual boxes below it, so those are mixed up. But you should be able to read and know the difference between correspondence and consistency, right? If you just look above where the boxes are.
So the coherence isn't the system.
Nivik, take a minute to look at the photo, because there's other people in the room who would like to speak as well. Okay.
Thank you.
The system, yeah. I would forget about the system in the analogy for now, because that was dumped a while ago.
Okay, cool. I was writing down what Thomas was saying.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah. I mean, Thomas will mention systems when he's talking about his methodology, his philosophical methodology.
Correct, sir.
But anyways, yeah. Correspondence criteria is the thing which science as a way of knowing is built upon. And empiricism, just the simple principle that a proposition is true if it corresponds with the objects in reality that they are referencing. So like just one example to remember, just think of the Statue of Liberty. So if the proposition is the Statue of Liberty exists in New York City, then you would think that from a correspondence criteria perspective, you would believe that to be true if in fact we can verify that the Statue of Liberty, the object, exists in New York City, the location. So
yeah, when you go and look for it, you're able to actually find it there.
Yep,
right?
that exact object. And you can, and we can find it by way of Google, and we can trust consistency with regards to that object if we've never been there ourselves, or if you're a naive realist by the criteria standards, you would feel as though you really can't believe it to be true unless you go there and experience it yourself, kind of like Marcus. You remember Marcus.
Yes, Don remembers Marcus.
Oh, I was talking to Niv.
There's another
one of my
yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
Go
please.
ahead.
No,
I was gonna say one of my favorite things about truth is that it generates new truths we couldn't even begin to imagine at the beginning of it. Like,
Yes.
once we understand, we have a coherent framework, and that coherent framework is consistent and it works, and it seems to correspond to our experience and our predictions. And you can use that framework and be like, okay, well, this idea works here, and you begin applying it in other areas, and then recognizing to change it a little bit, modify, because things are a little different. But once we have it, we have this truth thing that we're looking at, whatever we call it. When it's really true, all of a sudden new doors of exploration open to us.
Yeah.
Now I can navigate the forest with certainty, and I can offload so much other brain function for other things. The truth is, in a way, liberating. It liberates us from ourselves. It makes things easier. It makes things work better. It gives us more command and control over ourselves and our lives. That's, I think, a very another fun way to look at truth from an experiential or existential way. How does truth act in our life?
An example of
the
that
practical application.
Yeah, an example of that generative nature of truth. Listen to this. So, water is H2O. What kind of truth is generated out of that truth, that correspondence truth? So we can think of things like successful chemistry, accurate biological explanations, engineering applications, medical knowledge. The truth itself isn't creating reality. It is productive because it accurately tracks reality. So one could say truth is epistemically generative because correspondence with reality enables the generation of further justified knowledge. So that would be one example of that.
Truth generates more of itself in a way.
Yeah. It's generative. Yeah.
It's propedeutic. There's a lot. It's oftentimes a preliminary stepping stone to more truth.
I knew you were going to say
levels.
propedeutic, by the way. I fucking knew it. I should have put 50,000 down on that in Vegas.
On Kalshi, yeah.
I expected you to say propa, David. I was very upset.
Yeah, I mean, let's try and be high resolution, deep academic today. So, I thought of a couple good David connections that I'm saving for Brody. One for Brody specifically, but you'll hear it when you hear it. I'm not going to give it away.
Gotcha.
I was gonna say. I forget what I was going to say before you said something. It was just there.
You accept the Lord Jesus Christ. Just say the words with me as your Savior.
I was going to say something about authority. I think you brought up David Attenborough. There's a difference between making the fallacious appeal to authority that it's true because Mr. Attenborough said so versus we can trust that this is true because David Attenborough and the professionals have done the work, done the correspondence, have done the coherence, done the science, done the pragmatism.
We can trust David Attenborough as a source of truth when it comes to when you're watching a David Attenborough animal documentary. Doesn't mean he's infallible, but you could that should never be the requirement. And how that is different than the fallacy of do you know how I know dolphins do this? Or do you know how I know it's ultimately true that dolphins do this? Because David Attenborough spoke and that made it true. It's that's
because my aunt told me.
The ant-based cosmology, it's a throwback.
I love that.
I think people, especially when people become new atheists, for me, and they first heard talking about fallacy, and they heard about fallacy from authority. When an authority, someone that you truly trust, because you know that they go through the process, They go through verification. They go through testing. They go through experimentation. They go through prediction. They go through correspondence, and they take those ideas and they put them forward into a community that tries to use those ideas to generate new truth. And they try to do research, and sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't. And then this idea pans out and keeps moving forward. When that happens within the community that is actually dedicated to not just discovering truths but applying them, I think it would be unwise. It'd be foolish to ignore those advancements and to ignore that community as if it's not interested in that. It would be like going to the Miami Heat Youth Academy for basketball and thinking that they're not actually interested in developing young players into basketball players and professional basketball. Of course they are. This is what they're interested in.
Right.
It's not just a money grub. There is no conspiracy. These are human beings just like you and I that have a passion and dedicate themselves to that passion.
Yeah.
And so it'd be foolish to just say, "Oh, it's an authority," and therefore, well, no one. The authority fallacy one is usually one if you treat it as like a straight syllogistic because an authority said so, therefore it's true. That's ridiculous. But if you say, "I believe this is true," because those who have done X, Y, and Z, I agree with. That's a very different statement, and you would be foolish to not make that statement.
Yeah.
Foolish.
Don.
Yeah.
What about their character?
If you can, that's why. So, like, research papers have like conflict of interest. There's ethical rules. If it's found that someone in the community has some sort of character flaw or lied about something, they get shunned away from the community. They get their ability to publish, to be recognized, taken away from them. Like the guy who created the false autism study in the 90s, or different, someone that Travis and I had the pleasure of, hosting for a debate, or displeasure due to his performance that night. This is a person who lost their medical license because of what they were saying about COVID and what they were saying about the vaccine. This is someone whose character got them removed from this community. That's what's so great about this community. Right, so it's the same. That's what it is. It's the same thing like the bar. Lawyers get removed from the bar. It's not some political reason. Life is not the show suits. They did something that was unethical and lost their license.
Jordan Peterson being held accountable by the psychology board is another public example.
It's another one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, these systems that are just, these are philosophy of science issues, and these are in some cases there'll be more rigorous oversight. Tends to be when there's more on the line with regards to people's well-being. There tends to be like oversight committees like the psychology boards and medical ethics boards that exist around the world. And I think these are amazing things. This is kind of like, there are a lot of like Wild West operators out there who would see this stuff as like unnecessary bureaucracy. But I think that if you look at the corrective nature and how much good has been done by way of correction by these institutions and groups, it's so good to have that kind of oversight.
If the person can't be corrupt, why can't the community?
A community can be corrupt.
It's possible. It's possible.
But once you add more and more bureaucratic tape, it becomes harder and harder to, like, let's say, fully poison the governmental structure of the United States of America the way it's set up. Right? There's so much bureaucracy for good reason within that entire system. It is very, very hard to monopolize, I would say. But yeah, and then like just look at how judges, the role judges play in that system. They can slap down presidential orders. I'm a fan of bureaucracy.
The more eyes have to look at something, the harder it is to keep a coalition of people in line, right? So the more you create bodies that have checks and balances, like all of that stuff happens. And there is some corruption exists in every institution, in every human group. There's corruption. Like, what's the saying? Poor people try to get as much welfare as they can. Rich people try to get as much tax breaks as they can, and they'll fudge around the edges to get whatever they need. That's a fact of systems, but it doesn't define them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hereditary.
We create systems in a sense to kind of overcome that rat race emergence of the individual human enterprise. We create better systems that kind of transcend the movement of the individuals and the kind of the hierarchy pouncing of the individuals.
Yeah, like a democracy. And it sounded like we were arguing for like a merit system.
I mean, I haven't heard anyone argue for a merit system, but
appeal like when it comes to appeal to authority, like it sounds like it.
Well, and it's just, I think we were talking about the facts about what the appeal to authority, like some people will think it automatically is a bad or fallacious thing to appeal to an authority, and Don was pointing out how that's not the case, that it's automatically a bad or fallacious thing to do that. But if someone says, like, if someone's appealing to an authority in a way like, whatever Hitler says is true because Hitler says it.
Based.
That's like that's like where the fallacy is, right? It's not about like trusting the messaging of Anthony Fauci during during the pandemic. There's very good reason to do that. To trust in the truth of their authority.
The argument from authority has many branches. I mean, there's the argument from authority, the argument from consensus, the argument from mismatched authority. 1 out of 20 dentists say that Michael Jordan's the best basketball player ever. Like,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Come on, okay? So, like, that's the issue, is that when we're listening to Fauci, we're not. I mean, we know that he has to say what is the consensus upon within epidemiology. Otherwise, he would probably get sued because he's testifying to Congress. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know how the legal stuff works. That's not my area, but you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trusting Fauci as an authority. I'm trusting the consensus based in epidemiology and virology and all that kind of stuff. And yes, like Don said, there's corruption in every system. Is the entirety of the consensus of epidemiology correct? No, that would be a bad way to look at it. You would have to look at each individual consensus within the field of epidemiology, the different types, right? What is the consensus on this one thing about this one virus in this body?
Yeah.
Like, that's how deep you can get with it. But I don't even like to use the argument like appealing to authority. I really don't. I'm appealing to the consensus of the data, of the coherence, correspondence, but all that stuff, right? I'm appealing to that.
Yeah, I mean, you could say Anthony Fauci just gave an update on where we're at in the pandemic, and some would say, oh, you believe that to be true? You have very good reason to believe that to be true, I would say, because of his authoritative position, because that authoritative position requires him to be a deliverer of the consensus. So
yes, and he didn't choose that position for himself. He has an entire community behind him that apparently chose him to be in those positions. You know what I mean? He had to be vetted before he could just jump to that position that he was in.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when people watch the news, and like if you're watching CNN and they're saying like, a bomb was just dropped in Israel today, and there's still investigation going on as to where it came from. So we have someone to give us a little update, and then they give you a little update. Like, some people would be like, yeah, I'm not going to trust that authority when it comes to a truth, but you're well justified in trusting that news item. Like, a lot of people think that like, I'm going to listen to this stuff, but I'm not going to trust any of it. I'm going to do my own research and like crap like that. But it's like, there are people like journalists and news outlets that generally are providing you with good facts and information that you should trust. You really should. I mean, obviously they need to be reputable.
I agree. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean. I just my brain jumped. I apologize. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
In terms of like Don introduced me to Reuters. I don't follow politics a lot, but that does seem to be an authority of non-biased news sourcing. Now, would I call it
left leaning? Or wait, no, that was Ad Fontes. Maybe that I'm thinking. I don't know.
No, it's like non-opinion.
But I'm talking about facts, right? Like, I'm talking about the facts.
There's not much opinions in Reuters. It's just facts usually.
So you could look at that in terms of what bomb just fell on what city. The journalism there is most likely going to be less biased than a lot of other places, just based on the stats that we've seen online, what Don's shown me, and all that kind of stuff. So yes, if you want to use the colloquial term, I just have a personal issue with saying anything is an absolute authority, but we're not talking about.
But no one's talking about absolutes, right? So
exactly. So I'm going to correct myself. In general, yes, Reuters would be an authority on what happens in the news world, I would think.
I'm also saying that, like, again, like, people watch CNN, like when it comes to like getting the facts of what is occurring, CNN actually scores very high on getting facts correct. So that there is some bias in the opinions and how those facts may be presented. But what I'm saying is that everyone is reasonably justified to believe the facts that they are hearing from CNN. Like, it's like those are to believe that these are true things being said to them. And I think that to a lot of people is going to sound like, what? I thought I was supposed to be this like global skeptic and like never accepting anything and becoming the scientist or journalist myself. It's like, no, it's important for you to be able to submit to other experts.
You can still lie with the fact. The statistic doesn't necessarily mean anything because you can use it to back up.
I'm not talking about could be's right now. What were you going to say, Don?
I was going to say, if anyone listening goes on adfontesmedia.com, and there's the golden zone bubble. It's like highlighted in green. And anything in that green would be mixed fact reporting and analysis or simple fact reporting. That's the category that CNN falls into. That's the category that Political falls into. The New York Times, People, ABC, CBS, PBS, Fox Business, right?
That's the one that's slightly left, right?
Yeah, no, it's both left and I'm talking from both of them. News Nation,
okay.
USA Facts, NPR News, The Journal, Air Force Times. Even the Weather Channel has reported to be more left-wing somehow, right? Maybe because people talked about climate change to be more left-wing or whatever it might be. The point is that things within that square, you are justified in the sense of saying, this is true. This is what's happening in society. That's what's happening in the state of the affair within the facts reporting stuff. Things outside of that fall into the opinion or variation reliability, analysis or wide variation reliability, these are things that you really have to worry about. These are things like Democracy Now!, Jacobin, TYT's borderline propaganda, right? The Ben Shapiro show. Rebel Times. These things are also borderline propaganda. These fall outside of fact-finding missions. That's an important thing to remember. That within a lot of things that we're not that alternate media sources that we know alternate media source, right? The Young Turks, the Daily Wire, when you whatever The Truth at TV at The Truth at YouTube channel. These are places that want you, that these are people who distrust. They sow distrust, not because it's because for them truth isn't the primary thing they're after. Right? That's the difference between a journalist and a pundit. That's the difference between a scientist and a public salesman, a vitamin salesman. They have different motivations.
I would say, Don, that they are using truth. And I don't know if you came in before or after we listed off a bunch of these, but there's like an emotional like theory of truth, where it's just like their gut feeling about something with no other reference to any other criteria of truth is being used. So one way that I like to look at it is like, do you have a better alternative than those news outlets that are in the green zone that you described? Yeah, I do. It's, Young Turks or Tim Pool, clearly not in the green zone. And their job is to use some criteria of truth, like correspondence, to prove that they have the facts. Not CNN, not PBS, not all of these places. Okay. I have the facts. And I'd be like, okay, show me, based on whatever coherence, correspondence, whatever you would deem to be a valuable criteria of truth, show me that they're getting these facts wrong and that you have the better alternative. Yeah. I don't know if that's the best way to look at it. Like, oh, well, I can't conceive I think you're right. of a better alternative. So.
I think if you...
Can I go up to Don?
No, hang on, Nivet. Go ahead, Don.
I think you're right. I think that if you were to go to audit a news agency, asking them, what is your criteria of truth? How do you figure out if what you're saying is true? And if they respond something along the like of, oh, we read Reuters every morning and then we report to our audience what Reuters and AP are doing, that would be a problem. Whereas if you go to the New York Times, well, how do you discover things? They'll say, well, we have journalists working in Denmark and we have 5 journalists reporting from Iran right now. These journalists, they do this and this. They collect names, evidence, and then the editors look at it. You'll be like, oh, I can trust this organization. They're actually in search of what's happening. And I think that's how you would do it.
And by the way, just for the record, like things like ABC news.com, CNN, NBC News, these are highly reputable news outlets when it comes to facts. Fox News is not. It's outside.
Correct.
The reliability, the like base reliability zone. It's in that like wide variation in reliability zone compared to news value and high reliability zone that CNN, ABC News, CBS News, Forbes, the Globe and Mail, Wall Street Journal. Yeah, exactly. All of these things sit in, and
even
I'm
Fox Business is good.
Yeah, you said Fox something.
Fox Business is quite reliable, but I'm talking about like Fox News.
Foxnews.com.
Foxnews.com is not reliable. Yeah. Fox News is as reliable as TMZ.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And is it because mainly the facts, or is it mainly the analysis of those facts or camera footage that they miss so badly?
It's reliability. It's reliability in what they report. There's a wide variation in reliability. Yeah. Like things are reliable or not reliable. See a wide variation.
Like things where people are not getting good information. The Young Turks, the Jimmy Dore show, Alex Jones.
Young Turks is horrible.
It's
borderline propaganda.
Yeah, Timcast, Tim Pool, Louder with Crowder, Charlie Kirk show really isn't. I guess other people are running it now. But yeah, these shows, the Hartman Report. What else do we see on the left here? What is that one? the Media's Touch podcast,
Midas
like,
Touch, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, but this Adfontes Media is a fantastic
I
website.
remember, Don. It's the person who created the criteria for the system for the spectrum who is slightly left-leaning. That's the confabulation. Whatever that girl's name was, she's the one who was ultimately slightly left-leaning.
I guess so.
That's what we searched up and we found out. But that has nothing to do with the actual that graph, that XY graph that she created.
Remember, we took the time to go through they have like their methodology,
the scoring system,
their scoring system, how they do it, how they train people to evaluate it, and all of their like trainings are just open source on YouTube. You can just go and watch them. Right, every time they literally have them on YouTube open. Like you can just go and look and see how they do everything.
People is great. Politico is great. Forbes, I already said Forbes. CNBC, U.S. News, and World Report, Agency France Press, for those who are interested, Air Force Times, great. But yeah,
Well, we don't have to tangent too far on this because I have so many questions. One is my radio turned on AM for whatever reason on accident the other day, and I was listening to these absolute R words just talk about the most low resolution stuff, and so I'd be curious to do a deep dive onto like what are good radio stations to listen to and how they go about giving the facts and their reliability. But we're talking about truth tonight.
No, it was a good thing to fall into the news stations and things like that. This is how people get their truth. They don't go to science symposiums. You know what I mean? So it's a good thing to talk about this indeed when it comes to truth. Yeah. And your question about the correspondent nature of how do these people check each other, all that kind of stuff. That you hit the nail on the head on that in general for sure. So, but yeah, like this is important. This is how truth and falsehood spread around the world. Yes. Is our news stations.
Exactly. Yeah. No, this is a great way to finish the episode today. Go ahead, Niv.
When I was saying that it doesn't necessarily mean like facts, it doesn't necessarily mean that when I said there still could be a lie. I get that the argument is just about stating facts, but
I don't know what you're. Sorry, Nev. You're gonna have to catch me up. I don't know what you're talking about. Like what this is connected.
Used to manipulate. Facts can be used to manipulate a false argument in a causal outcome. And I was just saying like what's taken in facts to draw to back up an argument. It's still the facts is also a could be. It's like these people who got hit by lightning, they all had moles. It could be because they had moles. But what happened? Is factual, and
you're outlining
facts, manipulate and statistics to manipulate a argument to draw false narrative as a causal correspondence outcome, and that's not necessarily the case. So I'm just saying, just still beware of facts, and facts can also be manipulated. That's how come I was bringing up things like character, merit, motives, sentiments, and stuff like that, and bringing that into question when it comes to authority. When it comes to authority on anyone stating facts.
Was someone else trying to say something? But Niv,
all I know is for anyone watching, if you like Hassan, just know that he's literally the equivalent of Nick Fuentes in terms of containing misinformation and fabricated information. So.
Yeah, is he on the? I'm trying to look on the list. I'm trying to look at the list.
Static one.
Where's the static one?
You can try to search him. I post in the side chat or on their website. The static one.
I'm on
has
their
a little
website.
You can search on the side.
I haven't used this
search
in a
Hassan,
long
but-
time.
Yeah, you can search
Here,
Hassan,
yeah. Let me go.
but it's gonna make you pay for it. But if you go to the static chart, you can. They have the op. They have a new updated one, and I have it posted in the chat. You can just click on the chat and see it.
S Hassan. There we go. Hassan Abi, right?
Yeah, but it's
Oh,
not gonna
yeah.
make you pay for it.
Fuckers.
Yeah. But if you go click on home, or you
Oh, I
click like
see
their
him.
title page.
Holy shit! They put him in the misleading info. Yeah, he's right down there with useful
Perfect
idiots
for Twitch.
Actually, he's pretty on par with Candace Owens, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Nick Fuentes, which is to the right of Candace,
Right.
above America.
Right.
So,
Intense.
look at Joe Rogan, this podcast.
Where's he at? I gotta see. Wait, let me see.
Middle right.
Yeah.
Selective, incomplete, unfair persuasion, or other issues.
Yeah.
Low reliability.
Who else can we shit on? Actually, Bill Maher is in that zone as well.
Yeah, he's in the
same
middle.
zone as Joe Rogan, pretty much.
This is such a
bit
good
higher.
chart, man. Like, this is so genius.
It is.
Sam Harris making sense is close to the top.
Oh yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So watch if you listen to Sam Harris, you're basically watching Fox News. I'm kidding.
Making sense. Yeah, it's kind of in that middle zone.
Next to
pretty
TMZ.
close. But yeah, like CBC.ca, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. We're way up
It's a
there.
cool list. I like this.
Where's
This is why you should have state media.
We do have state media.
How much
PBS.
How
Yeah,
much
you
do
guys
they-
have
NPR,
PBS, yeah.
PBS. Yeah, we do.
How much do they make you pay for this, DD?
Per month?
Yeah, what I mean, like, can you see the whole list, or is this just like
You can
numbers?
search up individual people, and you can look at every single data point and look for yourself to see how the data points are.
How
like.
fucking badass is Pew, right at the fucking top
Yeah,
there.
Pew-
God, I love
You
Pew.
and USA Facts.
I love Pew.
That's such a Chad.
Fucking huge dick up there. And look at National Enquirer,
Whoa.
always bringing the very best.
You know, I actually got a phone call the other day from a Pew Gallup poll asking me a bunch of questions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They tell you where they get your number from.
Oh okay.
They got my number
I've
from
been getting
the
messages.
when I went to the museum at MassMoCA, Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Arts.
Oh okay.
Interesting.
What were the questions like?
They asked me like how I think the country's doing, how I think Trump is
Oh, okay.
doing, and then they asked me things like if I gambled recently,
Oh.
and they asked me questions
They must have
about,
known something.
and they must have known. They asked me questions about like my drug use or my drinking habits, and
Interesting.
how often I cook homemade meals, how often do I buy groceries out. And it was interesting how they weave all these questions together, what they're exactly looking for. But this,
And then your social security number, and then you get identity thieved.
yeah, no, it was interesting.
And then Don's like, and then they convinced me to go and save some of my money into one of those Bitcoin machines at a location. And
Put $1,000 in.
well, this was cool. Thanks everyone.
I had fun.
I think we handled truth well today, at least to my satisfaction. So it was great.
I learned.
Not sure what we're going to do tomorrow, but yeah, I have a I didn't want to go too late tonight because I have a big day of running a lot of errands. Got to get some vaccines and shots for my kitties tomorrow. I hate it when they get stuck with the needle. It sucks.
Yeah, you let him jump off the slide onto the concrete trampoline thing, but he can't get a little shot.
I know. Like my son Aegean is he's at that place now where he knows it's going to happen. He knows. And
I would scream, like holler all the way up till I was like 7 or 8. Like I was a screamer.
He looks into my eyes, deep into my eyes, like just please save me from this pain that I know is going to happen. And it just like crushes my heart. But
well, pain's not the same thing as suffering. So
correct.
Righteous suffering.
Yeah.
Righteous pain.
Healing is pain. That is the nature of it.
You know, the truth is, Travis, because you're taking away his consent. This is immoral.
Yeah.
You're trying to dominate him.
Yeah. This would be an evil I am putting my son through by
T-Jump just there shaking his head at you.
Yeah. T-Jump tisk. Well, if you literally sit there and call gravity evil, like I can see why he gets there. I mean,
bro wants to be omnipotent, like get a grip.
Bro wants his cake and eat it too. He wants to jump out of a plane and say the parachute's oppressive.
Yeah.
Travis, when you talk about fallibility and skepticism, I like that you bring that up because, I think that's something important to have because you don't want to be in an echo chamber and just people that think around people that just think like you, and you just confirming and reinforcing your biases.
Yeah, fallibilism, Niv, isn't necessarily going to cure you of echo chambers. But because echo chambers more have to do, like some people will have great epistemic standards and still prefer to be in echo chambers just by way of their desires, right? But I mean, just so that you understand what I mean, like the academic standard of what fallibilism is the principle that you can have knowledge without any reference to certainty. Certainty is not required for knowledge. And then in a more colloquial sense, it holds a meaning of openness to update. And I think both of those meanings are important. But yeah, it's good. And then, I mean, sometimes like I like engaging with a wide range of diverse opinions. I find it interesting. I also find it ethically valuable, with regards to my moral quest. And I think there's a lot of well-being you can provide by way of the good faith, helpful dialectic in conversations with people who maybe believe things that aren't correct with regards to their own health or something like that. So
let's wrap us up.
Yeah. Anyways, it is TAV time. Everyone come down to the tavern. We always only engage in legal substances in Trav's Tavern, never anything illegal. So on YouTube, if you're interested in joining us on Discord, coming to hang out, just click that Discord link right there and you will be exposed and eventually become addicted to the Pangburn community. And then we will have you in our cult and you'll never escape. Anyways, thanks for being with us tonight, and make sure you're out there maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you. Good night.